I'm Ellie Hubbard of Ellie Hubbard and Associates, and we are the River Committee of Leadership Napa Valley Class 5. Other members of the committee are Scott Anderson of VIP Realty, Diane Davis of Century 21 Parkside Realty, Tom Travis from Napa Valley College, Henry Mulak of KVON KVYN, and Ernest Stevenson with the Solana Napa Builders Exchange. We've been working hard for 9 months on our project. We hope that it will make a difference in the future planning regarding the Napa River flood control and development.
The original charge given to the committee was to come up with a vision of the Napa River for the year 2020. As we researched the past and the present of the river, it soon became clear to the committee members that there were already numerous well-planned visions for what the Napa River could look like in the year 2010. Unfortunately, none of these visions could move forward until some decision was made and action taken regarding the flood control along the river. As we attempted to gather information and more clearly define the stumbling blocks to development, we discovered another problem. There were numerous city, county, and federal agencies already working on various aspects of the river, and it was very difficult to find out exactly what had been done, what currently was being done, and what was planned for the future. There was no one person or agency which could provide a complete picture of the Napa River. We also discovered much of the information was difficult to obtain, and once obtained, even more difficult to understand.
The committee then decided that what the community really needed was not yet another vision of the river's future, but a better understanding of the problems which prevented the implementation of already existing plans and visions. It suddenly became very clear why the general public, the voters, had been less than enthusiastic about bond referendums regarding flood control. There is a real dearth of information and knowledge among the voters about the total river, its current problems, and future development. The real challenge, as we saw it, was to collect as much information as possible about the Napa River and related issues, problems, and plans, and put this information in an understandable format in a single place where people can find it. In addition, we decided we also wanted to create a vehicle for distribution of this information to the media, to service clubs, and to the general public.
The committee undertook the task of identifying as many as possible of the existing studies of the Napa River. All of the printed information, videos, etc. were placed in a box to be cataloged and organized for future placement in a library so that anyone could easily access all of the information in one place in the future. We then began identifying the key players. Who were the people who had done or were doing the studies? The planning for flood control, the planning for future development. Who are those expressing concerns or opinions about the river and its future? Certain key individuals and agencies were contacted for interviews. These interviews were videotaped and written transcripts were made. Henry Mulak, a radio news director by profession, volunteered to conduct and videotape the interviews.
Now, we videotaped the interviews, and we included some footage of the '86 flood and other relevant data. Working with Larry Machowski of KFTY TV 50, the videotaping was edited to create a mini documentary providing an overview of the river's current status with highlights of the interviews. Now, the mini documentary was designed for use in presentation at service clubs and public meetings where time is often limited. A written report was prepared for distribution to community libraries, agencies, and leaders. We will be distributing a copy of that report to you tonight. We would like to show you the mini documentary now, which can be used in public meetings to discuss and increase public awareness of the Napa River flood control and development. This is the Napa River, one of the few navigable rivers in the state of California. Flowing through the beautiful Napa Valley, officials, government leaders, and many others throughout the area agree it's a great natural resource with potential for recreational uses for those living in the Napa area and for commerce for the city of Napa. Behind the beautiful picture, though, is another story. The river is prone to flooding. Floods have hit the city of Napa at least 6 times in the past 100 years. Averaged out, that's approximately 1 flood every 15 years. 2 floods in the 1960s were only 4 years apart. These are scenes from the 1986 flood, the greatest recorded flood in the city of Napa, costing approximately $130 million in damage, taking 3 lives, forcing 7,000 people from 2,500 homes, and destroying 245 of those homes and damaging more than 125 businesses. Downtown Napa, the center of government and commerce for Napa County, was hardest hit.
Back in 1986, this part of town that we're looking over right here was basically the middle of the river. We had major flood flows that extended probably a quarter of a mile to a half mile in either direction of the center of the river.
Bob Sorson is the manager of the Napa River Flood Control Project, a $200 million plan using federal, state, and local funding to prevent such a devastating flood like the one in 1986.
The project right now is at a general design stage. We've done a preliminary design. We're looking at some minor alternative adjustments to that design. We've got a major problem that we've uncovered in terms of toxic contaminated sites along the riverbank downtown where there used to be waterfront type industrial development, underground gas tanks that leaked, fuel bulk plants, tanneries. We're looking into those because they will have cost implications for our project.
These are scenes from a promotional tape produced by the Army Corps of Engineers, a federal agency providing the technical know-how to the Flood Control District. A major question to be answered regarding the Flood Control Project is its financing. While the federal and state governments are expected to pitch in the majority of the $200 million cost of the project, the residents of Napa County and its government are expected to come up with anywhere from $20 to $40 million of the cost. Officials have been working on that aspect for almost 2 decades. Randy Starbuck, a public financing specialist who serves as the City of Napa's redevelopment coordinator, says an assessment district is probably one of the most viable means of helping pay for a large portion of the local share of the flood control project.
Well, assessment district basically is where a group of property owners draw, for lack of a better term, draw a line around themselves, and the parties within that own the property within that district basically self-assess themselves. They add an additional tax levy on their property to pay the cost of some particular public infrastructure activity, whether it be roads or storm sewer or sanitary sewer, or in this case flood control. They tax themselves. They voluntarily draw the district with the help of the city or the county, wherever the property is located. They take their own vote, and to the extent that they vote successfully, the levy goes into place, the money is raised, and the project is built.
Napa area residents have voted down an assessment before to pay for flood control, but that was before the record 1986 flood. Officials continue to work on a way to pay for the project. While that work continues, other government and community and business leaders are developing plans to use the river. Numerous groups and agencies, including the Napa City Parks and Recreation Department, have developed projects aimed at giving people reasons for coming to the river for recreational purposes. Plans include pedestrian walkways, bike paths, parks, boat launching facilities, fishing access, and more. Heather Stanton, the Napa City Parks and Recreation Department Director, is working on a river trails plan. She agrees with many local officials and community leaders who say the river is underutilized.
In the community, certainly I think it opens the river up to a lot of people that don't even know it exists. They don't see it. If they see it, it's crossing one of the downtown bridges, and that's not exactly the kind of exposure that makes you realize what an asset we have. In terms of the outside community, I think you will see much more boating access into downtown Napa. The 4th Street dock, which will be just across the street, will accommodate large boats. Once the 3rd Street Bridge is reconstructed, we'll actually be able to accommodate them into what was the historical turnaround for large boats right here at this point in the river.
Those who have kept track of what's being done in the Napa River agree it could be used much more by the area's residents and by visitors. Napa Mayor Ed Solomon is one of them.
Well, my opinion goes back to 1945 when I first came to Napa. I thought it was underutilized then. It's still underutilized.
The mayor is just one in a chorus of leaders looking to take advantage of the Napa River. City Council member Dave Paulson.
It probably has been underutilized since probably close to the turn of the century. We once had a thriving dock. We once had our link to the outside world, for all practical purposes, was either the railway or the river. Times have changed, and the use of the river has changed. For a number of years, I understand, the mid-years of this century, the river was really quite a mess. It was badly polluted and was just terribly underutilized. Now I think we're beginning to realize that it's time to recover the river, and I think this is an opportunity that we can't let pass.
Business leaders repeatedly stress the economic potential of the river. They see it as a way to bring people to downtown Napa. Jim Ford is the executive director of the Napa Chamber of Commerce.
The Napa River, to me, is the key to the downtown area. Whether the downtown area is merely successful or very successful, I think depends on the river. We're fortunate to have a river. There are a lot of cities that would love to have one right through the middle of town. So I think that in this case, the river is the key to downtown, and we should capitalize on it. We should take advantage of it and make sure that it's all of its potential is put to good use.
There's sensitivity to differences between the needs of local residents versus tourists. While business interests try to capitalize on the aspects of the river that draw visitors, community leaders trumpet the possibilities for homeowners and those already living in the area.
That many people view the river as a tourist attraction in terms of its potential, and forget the fact that maybe there really is something that is inherently valuable about having a river through your community, just for your own sake. I know that, as I say, the two communities that I mentioned earlier, Boise, Idaho, and Geneva, Illinois, those communities don't have a great tourist attraction river. They have a great amenity for the people that live there. It's a recreational asset for the entire community. And yes, it's beautiful to go look at. The extra added attraction is that it's something for the tourists, but it's especially good for the people that live there. So I think we have to begin to think that a river development in Napa is going to be something more than a tourist attraction. It's going to be good for us and good for our kids, a good place to have fun.
One city in the United States known to have capitalized on water running through town is San Antonio, Texas. What some said was nothing more than a drainage ditch that would flood in heavy rains was turned into the focal point of downtown San Antonio. Walkways combined with recreational activities and businesses offering food, merchandise, and other services to bring people to San Antonio's booming hotels and motels. This promotional tape, prepared by the San Antonio Convention and Visitors Bureau, gives a glimpse at marketing efforts for the area following completion of a flood control project and the addition of attractions.
Well, there are a number of communities across the country that have utilized water courses, riverfronts, ocean features in their revitalization efforts. The most well-known, of course, is the city of San Antonio in Texas, where they, through a combination of flood control and water diversion, solved the problem of downtown flooding and then created a natural marketplace festival atmosphere in their downtown for their population. So certainly San Antonio is an example of where you're taking a waterfront feature and allowing for people to interact by taking rides on the river, dining near the river, strolling near the river, doing their commercial shopping by the river, provides people something that's unique to a standard regional shopping center mall out in the suburbs someplace where there's no waterfront. In the East Coast, you have Norfolk, Virginia, which utilized their waterfront on the Chesapeake Bay very extensively to create the same type of an atmosphere.
While there's work going on to try and take advantage of the Napa River's commercial possibilities, eyes are also being turned to preserving an ecosystem that supports wildlife. The city's Parks and Recreation Director calls it resource management.
the natural beauty that we have in the Napa River, I think, surpasses most things that you find in California. You might find something close to this in the bayou in Louisiana. The balance, the difficulty, and the challenge, particularly to government, is one of the reasons the river is as beautiful as it is the fact that it has not been accessible. When people begin to access a natural resource, we know what happens. So that's going to be our challenge, to figure out how to make this asset available to as many people as possible without ruining it.
Environmentalists are concerned about the future of the river. They see it as a place for wildlife, a place where the needs of those living in the valley and visitors are balanced with those of nature. Jim Hinch, a member of the Sierra Club, canoes in the river regularly and has seen the large number of plants and animals, some of them endangered, like the river otter.
Of course, the most beautiful parts are those that haven't been touched by man yet, to a great extent. Upriver is really great. There's a section right across over there, just at the end of the Oxbow, the other end of the Oxbow, that is a fantastic wildlife habitat. It's where the inside has deposition on the inside curve, and fantastic birds in there. It's used, it belongs to Al Giovanni, and but people have used it just to observe the wildlife from the bank.
Hench is concerned about development plans for the river and the impact the proposed flood control project would have on the endangered species, specifically an endangered plant.
The ecology of a river has developed over millions of years, and you have life here that is very unique to this river. The Mason Roleopsis, mudflat quill plant, is here. It's only found here. And it's an endangered species on it, obviously. There's been talk of replanting it. Well, obviously, the fact it is endangered says you don't just replant it anywhere. You've really got to know what you're doing on replanting an endangered species. And we don't know. So there's, you have to really look at these things.
The Sierra Club has not endorsed the Napa River Flood Control Plan. While some of its members say implementation of the plan is a logical step in protecting property and lives, they want to see further steps to protect the river's ecology. While some areas of the river are pristine and harbor wildlife, underground industrial pollution worries those who would dig into the river banks. Years of industrial use, like tanning of hides and fuel storage, have left their mark. The manager of the flood control project says federal and state agencies will not allow work to go forward unless an answer to the toxics problem is found.
Basically, we're talking about waterfront property, and this river does connect to the San Francisco Bay, which is a very sensitive ecosystem. And there are a lot of regulations and legitimate concerns about water quality in the river and in the bay, as well as some potential for affecting perhaps drinking water supplies or uncovering some hazardous materials that might be in themselves hazardous to, say, occupants of a building that might be built on that site, or otherwise hazardous to the environment in general.
Neutralizing the toxic contamination along the river is expected to cost up to $20 million. While only 1/10 of the total $200 million cost of the project, the burden falls on those who own property along the river.
Local agency is responsible for providing the real estate to build the project. And according to federal guidelines, that they don't want to deal with toxics financially or problematically. In other words, it's our problem, and they want us to address the problem and basically take care of it before they start.
The longer it takes to find answers to the complex problems of toxics, wildlife, public access, and financing of the flood project, the longer local residents will have to wait to realize the river's full potential. One of the benefits to completing the flood control project is more tax money for public services. While the river remains underutilized, property values are being artificially held down as much as $500 million over 30 years, according to John Tudor, the Napa County tax assessor.
The fact that the river floods reduces property values because you can't do certain things in what is known as the floodway right on the banks of the river and then the floodplain. It costs you more to develop, and in some cases you can't develop at all because there has to be room for the water to come through. So that reduces the value of property. Property is going to sell for less money, and we're supposed to recognize that as a part of our assessment practices, and we do.
The tax assessor says completion of the project would add several $100 million to the value of riverfront property. The higher assessments would mean more tax dollars to local government coffers, the kind of money that provides police protection, health and social services, streets and roads, and other public services. Once the flood control project is completed and building is allowed on land where construction is now forbidden, there's more economic benefit to be considered. The new businesses would provide jobs for local residents, sales tax dollars for local services, and more reasons for visitors to come to Napa and spend their money. With those factors in mind, you can understand why business leaders, like the executive director of the Napa Chamber of Commerce, are anxious to find answers to the complex problems.
This is a resource that we've got to capitalize on. I think we need to take advantage of it, and that's a logical use, and I mean the logical reason for pursuing it. And I believe that, yeah, it will create greater revenue, and I think it will clean up the area. I mean, there's possibilities of some terrific, I guess, development, if you want to call it that could take place. It can't now.
The agencies working on the flood control project have mapped out a road on the way to the full utilization of the river. Proposed financing for the project comes first. The federal government wants to see if local residents can decide how to pay their portion before it commits any of its own funding. Once financing questions are answered, then environmental reviews will get underway. Answers will be found in the preservation of wildlife while cleaning up toxic contamination. From there, construction of the project, which is expected to take around 5 years.
Documentary and a second video containing the complete unedited interviews and all related printed information and reports collected or created by this study will be held on file at the Napa Valley College Library. We have the file and materials here for inspection if anyone is interested in looking at them. A listing of the studies, reports, consultants' proposals, drawings, and videos is listed in your status report booklet. This material is available for study during regular hours of the Napa Valley College Library, and certain portions may be accessed through interlibrary loans. Copies of the status report will also be made available to other libraries.
We would like at this time to entertain any questions from the audience about our project. And also, Scott asked me to remind everybody, if you didn't get a copy of the report, we have plenty of them available.